So last week, I talked a little bit about changing seasons. And has anybody I've heard lots of people saying that this is the most beautiful trees. The colors have just been amazing. I know several people have said it. Have you noticed that? Anybody been driving around? I know you all drove up in the mountains, some of you, but I just can't. I stop when there's no traffic on our road and take a picture. It's just so beautiful. And so I'm gonna continue to talk about some changing seasons. And so you'll notice, if you want to follow along, it's the message today is called Feeling Lonely. And so I think if we're all honest, there are some time in life where we've felt lonely. So we're going to hear about the Apostle Paul's struggles of feeling alone. You know that he was sitting in prison. You can imagine he's in solitary confinement. He's in prison. So you know that he had to feel alone and how he overcame it. And interestingly, and I just find this amazing how I usually pick the things that I'm going to speak on weeks or months, actually, sometimes in advance, if I'm doing a whole book of the Bible. And how God just orchestrates things that whatever that is ties so much into what I'm experiencing or some other people are experiencing in life. And it's not, I even said to David last night, there might be people that think that this is about them or this is about me. But like God orchestrates that through the Spirit. And I'm amazed at how he does it. And so even as much as Wednesday night, we talked at our ladies group, kind of our Wednesday night group, about finding your people. And when you haven't found your people, there's like this sense of loneliness. And one of the scriptures that was used in there, which I hadn't, again, it was a God moment, that God made us to need each other, relationship with him. And so God put Adam in the garden, right? And then in Genesis 2:18 it says, he looked at Adam and he said, it is not good for man to be alone. And so we talked about that. It's not necessarily a man and a woman. It's all of us being alone. We're made for relationship with each other and for relationship with him. And so I want to read 2 Timothy 4. And remember, this is actually the last words that the Apostle Paul wrote. Okay? This is the last book that he wrote, that they believe. And it's the last chapter. It's the very last words that he wrote. Okay? And so he's dying. He's in prison in Rome, waiting to be executed. All of his friends are not there. And he's struggling with feeling alone. But we're going to learn from how he goes through that situation and how we can apply that to our life. And so I want to read 2 Timothy 4, 1-21. And there's some interesting names in there. So I hope I say them correctly. In the presence of God and of Christ Jesus, who will judge the living and the dead, and in view of his appearing and his kingdom, I give you this charge. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct and rebuke and encourage with great patience and careful instruction. For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. I think the time has come. Instead, they suit their own desires. They will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. But you keep your head in all situations, endure hardships, and do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry. For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time of my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on the day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. Do your best to come quickly to me. For Demas, because he loved this world, has deserted me, and has gone to Thessalonica. Crescens has gone to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Get Mark and bring him with you, because he is helpful to me in my ministry. I sent Tychicus to Ephesus. When you come, bring the cloak that I left with Carpus at Troas, and my scrolls, especially the parchments. Alexander, the metalworker, did me a great deal of harm. The Lord will repay him for what he has done. You too should be on your guard against him, because he has strongly opposed our message. At my defense, no one came to my support, but everyone deserted me. May it not be held against them. But the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength, so that through me the message might be fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. And I was delivered from the lion's mouth. The Lord will rescue me from every evil attack and will bring me home safely to his heavenly kingdom. To him be glory forever and ever. Amen. And greet Priscilla and Aquila and the household of Onesiphorus. Erastus stayed in Corinth, and I left Trophimus. Anyway, I don't know how to exactly say these, but sick in Miletus. Do your best to get here before winter. Eubulus greets you, and so do Pudens and Linus and Claudia and all the brothers and sisters. And so these are the last words that Paul writes, sitting there in prison by himself. He knows that he'll soon be going on to the Lord. He's going home. But he also knows that all those friends that he's been with, they're not with him at this time. And so I want to just look at a little bit of that, and if you just excuse all those ways that I couldn't have pronounced those words. So he's going through some things, so I want to see how he's going through these things and what we can learn from it. So first of all, like I've been sharing, Paul's going through a season of change, a passage of life. You know, we all go through seasons of change. And so every season of change, there are good things often, sometimes, and there are also times of loss. When you change a job, it might be a good move of a position, but there's also a loss at the same time. When I began to be here for my ministry, I left people and friends at McDaniel, so there was a loss. There might be moving from one house to another. You might be going to a place of where you're going to live, but you might have lost some neighbors that you just really loved. And you can still see them, but there's always a time of loss. There might be going off to school for the first time, or going off to even moving away to college. There's a loss for the person moving. There's a loss for the person, maybe the parent who has a child going away. Yesterday, my cousin's daughter got married. So that's a wedding day. It's a celebration. Again, it's a transition in life. They're giving their daughter, they're gaining a son-in-law. But there's a time of transition, and there's a loss and there's a gain. So there's these transitions in life. And so Paul says, he's at the end of the life. In verse 6, he says, I have already been poured out like a drink offering, and the time has come for my departure. I've fought the good fight, I have finished the race, and I've kept the faith. So he knows that this is a transition coming in his life. He knows that his days are numbered or near. And so he's saying, I'm alone. But we're going to continue on and see how he responds to that. And you know, there are a lot of folks, I believe, that have a sense of aloneness, whether we share that with others or not. I read one time, I don't know where I read it, but that 70% of elderly folks, like living in a nursing home, never get a visit. Isn't that profound? What an opportunity that we have. 70%. And statistics that I read there said that most lonely people are elderly sick men. So they're in these places of loneliness. And so here in this text, there's Paul, and he's alone. And he's going through a transition. So he's going through a change. The next thing is that was separated for a long time. So anyone ever been separated from someone for a while? Maybe it's a job, or it's maybe you're stationed in another country if you're in the service. Maybe someone's ill in the hospital, you're away from them, or travel, whatever it might be. There are times when we're separated. Maybe your spouse is working 80 hours a week. My husband used to be on a shift where he did that a lot. He's not on that now, so I praise God for that. But Paul writes in 2 Timothy, he says 2 times, he says, why don't you come to see me? In verse 9, he says, do your best to come to me quickly. And verse 21 says, do your best to get here before winter. So he's, being honest. He's human. He's saying, I want to see you. And so there are actually 7 friends here that he misses. And so Demas had deserted him, he said. Crescens had gone to Galatia. Titus had gone to Dalmatia. Erasmus stayed in Corinth. And Trophimus in Miletus. And then there's Timothy, which is the book of Timothy. So all these friends he misses them. And so he's traveled around with all these guys on his missions. And he's missing them. And so now he's in prison, and none of these friends are there with him, and he misses them. I also was reading, and I don't know what year this statistic is, but 1/4 of Americans move every year. It's another time when you're separated. They move every year, so they're like uprooted and they move somewhere else. So that's another transition. And so they move, and there can be a time of loneliness when you get to that new place and you don't know people. Maybe, you've come to Westminster, you know some people, but, we can feel that when we go to a new place. And so, but Americans, we're kind of like, we're independent kind of people. And we keep ourselves often busy because we're trying to fill that time. And so Paul says, do your best to come quickly. Is there anyone, thinking about loneliness and thinking about being separated? This just made me really think about, is there someone, like we had that phone call this week, and that just brought joy to us. I hope it brought joy to that person too. But is there somebody that you know that might be feeling lonely? I also got to visit Darlene this week. I know that she would love to hear from anybody. If they want to send a card, if they want to call, if they want to stop over. But is there anyone that maybe you should, the Spirit might be placing on your heart? You got to call that person. Or send them a text, or write them a letter, or do something nice. I don't want to give her too much chocolate, but I know Darlene likes chocolate. I just took her some, so maybe next time. But there's something, no one knows. We don't know if tomorrow is our last day, or next week, or next month, or next year. And so we need to remember those people that we think might be feeling lonely and don't have too many visits. And so the next thing is number 3, is that someone in this text, some people came against Paul. Remember that part? In verse 14, it says a guy named Alexander. So this is also another time when you can feel loneliness. It says, Alexander the metalworker did me a great deal of harm. The Lord will repay him for what he has done, and you should be on your guard against him because he strongly opposed our message. And so we don't know actually what he did, but evidently he was kind of resistant to whatever, the message that Paul had, and he's attacking him. And we don't know whether, he's attacking behind his back, turning people against him, whatever it might be. So when you feel that somebody's coming against you, there's it can be a separation, like a loneliness. You're wondering why. That saying of sticks and stones can break your bones, but names can never hurt you. And that's not really true. No, a broken bone can probably heal in about 6 weeks, maybe. But I know my husband's was 6 weeks. He was back to work in March after his neck breaking. So, but you know what? It takes a lot longer sometimes when our spirit and our hearts are hurt. And so when someone comes against us, it can be a time of healing, a time of loneliness. Maybe you remember something when you were young. Somebody made fun of you at school, whatever it might be, tall, short, skinny, fat, whatever it might be. There are things that we remember. Maybe it's people ganging up against you, or you feel like you're on the outside. And maybe when you're young, they have teams and you have to pick teams, and then maybe you're the last one. And a feeling of loneliness, like somebody didn't pick me. Or it might be when we're grown up. And so we can experience those kind of things, and sometimes we have a feeling of loneliness and feeling isolated. And so if we're not careful, we can start to build a wall. Build a wall instead of a bridge. I can remember going to a conference, and there was one lady, I don't remember who she was, but she was the main speaker. And she was talking about not building walls, but build a bridge and get over it. Get over it and build a bridge to somebody. And that was working in teams, And so remember, don't build walls. Take your walls down, and don't be like a turtle and go into your shell. Another example I thought about. So he says, I'm not going to, he didn't say I'm not going to let anybody get close to me. When you do that, you get even lonelier. You just go in this circle and get lonelier. So the next thing is that Paul felt deserted, and these are things that we could feel. Rejection probably is one of the most painful things that we go through. We can have physical pain, but rejection is like you're being abandoned or betrayed by people that you thought were there. And so it might be, sometimes it's hardest with those that we love, a friend, a family member, a spouse, or maybe it's a business or organization that you gave everything to, and then suddenly you're out the door, laid off, whatever it might be. Or you have to leave, or someone else leaves. So people that you thought you could trust and that you could count on, they weren't there. They were unfaithful or disloyal. And so the awesome thing, we think we're alone, but God feels all that pain. Think of Jesus Christ on the cross. He knows exactly what we're feeling. He knows beyond what we're feeling. And so he knows what we feel. He cares about our heartache and how we feel. And the thing is, we were created by God. These feelings were from God. And relationships and acceptance of others, those kind of things can sometimes be devastating, but he knows that we just need to remember that he loves us and he's there and he never leaves us. Some people, the things that we do when we feel alone, we can do a lot of different things. Sometimes we can throw ourselves into working. You're working, it might be intentional or not. There's a lot of things we can do, whether they're intentional or not. Throw yourself into working. And so you don't have time to think about being lonely. Or you can throw yourself into shopping, materialistic things. And so you fill your lives with those things, and if I just have this and this and this, and maybe it's conscious or maybe it's not. If I have these things, somehow I will feel better. I won't be focusing on the loneliness that I feel. We can throw ourselves into prescription drugs or other things, alcohol. I saw a video just this morning of a situation, and it was a whole bunch of guys, and they were just all doing, like, at one time, a shot. It just saddened me. It really saddened me, because that's not what it's about. And anyway, you can throw yourself into all kinds of things and try to kind of compensate for the pain that you feel. And so if you can't find relief, you drink this shot or you pop this or whatever it might be so you don't feel bad. There are a lot of other things. There can be things like one-night stands or bar hopping or whatever, those kind of things. You can fill your life with those things. And so you're trying to hide that loneliness that you're feeling. And all those things don't satisfy. And so many people, they fall in this depression. And you can spiral down in that too. And then we build those walls instead of the bridges. And we try to protect ourselves. And so we do these self-defeating actions, and we need to stay stopped of them. Stay stopped, and there's a season of loneliness. But the cool thing is what Paul does. All right, he gives us this example. So what do we need to do when we feel like that? And so let's see. The first thing he does that I have is that we can use our time for good. You know that saying that if you have a lemon, make lemonade, right? It's not quite right, but anyway, resist the temptation to just sit there and do nothing. Actually do something, make some lemonade. So Paul says, this is interesting. He says, bring my books and bring my coat. Bring me the cloak I left with Carpus and bring my books, especially the parchment. Okay, so that seems awful trivial. But think about that. You know, when you get down, feeling lonely or depressed, a lot of times you're not really thinking about what I need to do to take care of myself. I'm not getting sleep. Maybe I'm not eating, or maybe I'm eating too much, or maybe I'm whatever it might be. He's saying, bring me my coat. He's trying to be comfortable, take care of himself. He's not throwing a pity party, complaining. He's in his last days. All of his friends are gone. He could be doing that. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't have a cell phone in prison. He can't text anybody. He can't call anybody. Everything is shut off from him. Can you imagine? I'm sure he's lonely with that. He's in a cell. He doesn't have a cell phone. And so his friends are hundreds of miles away in another country. And he doesn't say, is this the reward I get for all these years of ministry? He doesn't say that, right? He has won thousands and thousands of people to Jesus Christ. He has worked with planting churches and all these friends and all this, and he's in his final days, and he's alone. And so he says, bring me my coat. Interesting. Imagine that the prisons that they're in were kind of dark and cold. No, they're not like what we think about. So bring me my coat, and he's taking care of himself. The next thing he says is, bring me my books. And so Paul is an evangelist, and evangelists, they love to be around people. He's been around people for all these years, and there he sits in solitary confinement. And so the best that he could do, bring me my books and my parchment, and he starts to write some letters. And he writes the most profound letters. Think about that. It's much of what we call the New Testament is what he wrote while he sat there being alone, right? And so 2,000 years later, we're reading those letters, learning from his situation and learning from the words that God gave him and from his experiences in life. So if it wasn't for him being in prison, do you think he might not have slowed down enough to write those letters? Sometimes we got to slow down enough to hear God to do the thing that he wants us to do. So when you're feeling lonely, is there something that you can do that you can't do when there's lots of people around? I know that I have trouble focusing when there's a lot of people around, a lot of people talking and all that kind of thing. So that's why I have to have time by myself, because I can't focus when all that's going on. I don't know if you're like that as well, but I don't mean to be rude or anything, but I just can't focus when there's a lot of noise and people going around. And so I love them just as he loved the people that he was with. But God orchestrated this, that he's sitting in this prison cell to write the letters of a lot of the New Testament. Galatians and Ephesians and Philippians. Here we are in Timothy, Colossians, a lot of the letters. And so will anybody benefit from you being alone? Think about that one. If I'm with people all the time, I can't focus enough to have a message put together. So it also benefits me by me having time alone, even though I love people. And I think that's the same thing he can teach us. Sometimes we feel those feelings of aloneness, but sometimes the question might be, God, how do you want me to use this time for your good? And then the next one is, don't hang on to offenses. So don't relive situations over and over and over in your mind. The more you do that, the bigger it gets. You're just focused on, that's all you're focused on. And so then you become bitter. In verse 16, Paul says, everybody has deserted me. And he says, may it not be held against them. All his friends deserted him, but he didn't want it to be held against them. So, and this is probably the most influential Christian of this time, except for Jesus. And so no one stepped up to defend him. And he writes that. Don't hold it against him. So he wasn't going to let this situation make him bitter or lonely or start feel bad or have a pity party. And so when our hearts get like that, that's when the walls start going up. And we got to start building a bridge. Reach out. Share with somebody. Let them share or speak into your heart. Let them listen to you. And so verse 17, Paul says, the next thing is, know that God is still on your side. He says, everybody left me, but the Lord stood by my side and gave me strength. So when we're lonely, God is there, no matter what. Over and over, the Bible says, if you have a relationship with Jesus, God's going to always be there in your life. He says, I will not leave you orphans. I will not leave you comfortless. I will send the Comforter. Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. Those are just a few that I was thinking of. So he's always there with us, and we're never really alone. So this loneliness, a lot of times, though, that loneliness allows us to recognize his presence. As we've been too busy or too whatever, focused on whatever it might be, we got to stop those things to recognize his presence. And Amy Grant, I used to love to sing some of her songs, but one of her songs says, I love a lonely day because it forces me to focus on you. Ever think about that? Loving a lonely day. And I know that if you've experienced that, when he draws you back, just is the most amazing feeling. I know Linda shared a couple weeks ago, it's just amazing just to sit in the presence of the Lord. I know she has a she shed. I don't know that's where she was sitting, but those she sheds. But it's just amazing sometimes that loneliness will bring us back to him. And so the last thing is look to the needs of others. So to stop focusing on our loneliness and ourselves, and then find a place to use your talents and your gifts to help other people. The loneliest people really are the people that are wrapped up in themselves, interestingly enough. God made us. He created us. He wired us to be giving our lives away. I said, I think last week, that you have to give your life away before you have your life, your true life that he created you to be. And so if you want to stop being lonely, you got to be a friend to somebody else. Lots of loneliness is really often fear. We're afraid to let somebody in. We're afraid to let them see who we really are. We're afraid to let them see that I make mistakes. We're afraid of, different things. Maybe I've been hurt in the past and I don't want to risk a relationship again. I might be rejected. I might have more pain in my life. And so we can get into that cycle, but we need to look to others. And so if we give our lives away, we will reduce and eliminate the loneliness. Verse 17, Paul says, all these people have left me, but God is with me. He says, through me the message might be fully proclaimed, and all the Gentiles might hear it. And so he's, even in this loneliness, he's in walls, he's in literal walls. But he's he's taking down those walls and building a bridge. He's writing letters that'll go on forever. Think about that. He's literally in walls. And he's sitting there writing letters that are building bridges to people for thousands of years in eternity. And so we have to take a risk sometimes and begin to step out and help other people and love other people. You might be feeling that nobody cares or loves you or wants you, or sometimes you just, I think if we're all honest, we've all had a moment like that. Where everything just sort of fell apart. And, you just feel like nobody understands. But the most awesome thing is that God understands, that Jesus is there. And the crazy part is that we're searching for this something to fill this hole in our heart. And we expect other people to fill that hole in our heart, and the only person that can fill it is Jesus. But we don't know it. So we're trying to fill it with busyness and this or that, or shopping or drinking or whatever it might be. And we're filling that, and we think that we're, doing okay. But when it all comes down and we sit there, we have this loneliness if we don't have Jesus. So he can come in and he can just fill that presence. He can fill us. We can just have a joy and just a peace and a love that you just can't explain unless you've had it. And so I want to just open that up to you. Many of you, I know that feeling. But if you don't, I know I was at a really low place. I really felt alone. And I didn't know what I was missing. But I cried out to God, God, what are you doing? And there wasn't a lot to live for, actually, I felt like at that time. And I cried out, and it's like the presence of the Holy Spirit and Jesus came into my life, and there was just a love and a joy and a peace that I can't explain. It's only by Jesus. And so, we run around trying to do these things, and here's Paul sitting in a prison, and he's calling out to God. He knew Jesus. Knew Jesus was the answer that everybody needed. And so if you're searching for that, just open up your heart to Jesus and just say, I want a relationship with you. I want to talk to you. I want to know you more. Not about religion. It's not about rituals and those kind of things. It's about a relationship. And it's real. And then the other thing is to be a part of a church family. It's about relationships again. Build bridges with people that have been through stuff. If you're going through a season of loneliness, I can understand loneliness because I've been there. I can understand different things in life because I've been there. You can understand things that I don't understand, someone else might, because they've been there. And so when we have that, we need a church family. We need people to lift us up, to encourage, and just to listen and be there. And so I want us just to think about as we go from this week, the holidays are coming up soon. Thanksgiving, Christmas will be, not too far off. And oftentimes, those are the times when people feel alone. It's known. I've heard it from some of you. And so think about those people around. Think about those elderly people that that aren't able to get out of their houses. Think about that teenager who's going through something, struggling with something. I know a teenager that lives with grandparents, and there's a difficult situation in his life. Think about him. He might be feeling alone in that. Or maybe somebody who's lost a loved one, or someone who's gone through a divorce or separation recently, or someone that's just sitting home. Someone that hasn't been here. You don't know why. Let's reach out to him. Somebody who lost a job, or somebody who doesn't have enough money to make it through this month. So I really think that the world, especially it seems over the last years, the world is full of people that are waiting for someone to love them. Someone to show Jesus' love for them. And so we need to say, God, use me, help me build a bridge to somebody, to be a friend and to help somebody in need. That's the challenge this week. So all of us will go through lonely times, but we will never walk alone when we're walking with Jesus. Amen.
Make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide, hold me closely to His side. With love and strength for each new day, He will make a way. He will make a way. Oh, God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide, hold me closely to His side. With love and strength for each new day, He will make a way. He will make a way. By a roadway in the wilderness, He'll lead me. Rivers in the desert will I see. Heaven and earth will fade, but His word will still remain. And He will do something new today. Oh, God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide, hold me closely to His side. With love and strength for each new day, He will make a way. He will make a way. By a roadway in the wilderness, You lead me. Rivers in the desert will I see. Heaven and earth will fade, but His word will still remain. And He will do something new today. Oh, God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. He will be my guide, hold me closely to His side. With love and strength for each new day, He will make a way. He will make a way. With love and strength for each new day, He will make a